Steven Spielberg. What more can I say?
I mean, from inspiring people's inner child in Jurassic Park, creating a classic action character which everyone fell in love with, to trying to recapture that same magic in a cash grab twice, and to fueling our childhood nightmares in this,
PG movie?
Steven Spielberg has had a hand in some of the most iconic franchises ever, and is the definition of Hollywood elite. And if there was ever a person to join him alongside, then that would be none other than Peter Jackson. Director of all the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies, whatever the difference between them is.
Yeah, okay, I've never actually seen them, but people go crazy for it.
With Steven Spielberg's storytelling mixed with Peter Jackson's grand sense of VFX, this was
an unstoppable force,
ultimately culminating in one masterpiece of a film. The Adventures of Tintin is a 2011 motion capture animated adventure film based on a British comic in the 1950s. The movie was directed by Steven Spielberg, produced by Peter Jackson, and apparently was under Nickelodeon. Jeez, they were on fire that year.
Anyway.
This movie apparently took a whole 7 years to make, and, well, when you look at the animation,
oh boy, the animation.
you can easily tell why. The film did pretty well at the box office, and got pretty good reviews, which only led to the kind of confusion of where the franchise was going.
Hold on though, it says right here that 3 Tintin movies were in the planning. Oh, wait, no. It's from 2011.
I mean, I guess Steven Spielberg was busy with the Jurassic World movies.
Upgrade?
And I never actually saw this movie back in 2011, but I do remember seeing ads for it, and thinking it just looked awesome. However, even if it never does get a follow-up, I want to do my part and do justice to this subversive masterpiece, because it truly deserves it.
This is The Adventures of Tintin.
So we start the movie off with a very stylized opening based on the source material, and I thought this was a really fun way to get into this world, as it's animated beautifully, especially to the people who thought the actual animation was way too realistic and uncanny.
And, in my opinion, we'll get to it.
So now the actual movie starts, and holy what? Look at this animation! Are you kidding me? This is 2011? And more shockingly, people actually have a problem with this? This is beautiful!
I mean, just look at it!
As far as I know, the two most notable animated movies that have used this technique of motion capture are The Adventures of Tintin and Polar Express. However, while one does it so uncanny valley to the point where it's uncomfortable to watch and scared me as a kid, speaking of which, with Christmas kind of coming up, that's actually a really good video idea.
Anyway,
that did it poorly, so I can easily see how people will get creeped out by it, because I was one of those people. However, here, I think it does it beautifully. Anyway, while in the market, we see Tintin, voiced by Jamie Bell, who, once this franchise just went nowhere, ended up being cast in, I kid you not, Fan Forstick.
I don't even need to make a joke out of that.
But an artist draws the Fallout guy, the cartoon version of Tintin, which was actually really clever. As his dog, Snoopy, Snowy,
Alright, yeah, it's pretty much the same character.
comes across a model of an old pirate ship named the Unicorn, as well as some subtle comedy.
Reign of Charles I.
Charles II.
That's what I said, Charles II.
Then, evil Abraham Lincoln, I guess, voiced by James Bond, by the way, tries to buy it from Tintin, which, by the way, is such a fun name to say, sorry. Anyway, he comes down to his apartment or something, even though he looks and sounds 16, yet is also a reporter and lives in a building with this caretaker or something, who, by the way, is the only other woman voiced character in the movie, strangely enough, amidst a fairly large cast.
Alright, yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't really know what was going on for like the first 15 minutes.
Which I guess is just a staple of these masterpiece Nickelodeon movies. But since that one ended up being one of my favorite movies ever, I'll see what this one has to offer. So after a 90s mischief chase scene, which comes out of nowhere by the way, however, apparently the cartoon was big on slapstick humor, so I can't really fault them for being faithful to it. Anyway, Tintin suspects something happened on that ship and wants to get to the bottom of it. However, he finds it's gone and goes searching at some big mansion thingy, and then this happens in like the span of 10 seconds?
You see what I mean about the beginning of this movie?
And after the second big slapstick 90s chase sequence with an animal, I really started having my doubts about this movie, even if it was faithful to the source material. Although, I wanted to stick with it. I mean, come on, it's Steven Spielberg and Peter Jackson.
They couldn't mess this up. Wait,
so Tintin thinks James Bond stole the ship. However, it appears to be just a replica. Then, within his broken model ship, he finds a secret message. Once someone comes to the door of his orphanage? Or is that his mom? Or is that whatever, we never see her again. But Tintin just pulls a gun out of nowhere, and things only get more weird when we get into a giant gunfight and this random dude dies.
Mrs. Finch! A man's been shot on our doorstep!
Not again.
oh, you know how it is. Regular Tuesday at the Tintins.
Then we get introduced to these guys.
Oh, I don't know them either.
Apparently they are detectives and are big in the comic too, even if they don't really fit this style of the movie. But again, you have to put them in there or else they wouldn't be Tintin. However, the more and more I keep saying that, the more I question about whether this should have been adapted in the first place. After a classic misdirection joke, I swear I've heard an iCarly or something like 3 times.
Caribou Jean! Does that mean anything to you? Great Scotland Yard! That's extraordinary! What is?
Worthington's have a half-price sale on bowler hats.
A pickpocketer steals his note, as we get a really cool and exciting scene, which is something that this animation style just excels at. Then, right after, he gets taken by these guys, in a way so similar to the Door movie, it's kind of hilarious. Of course, we get more slapstick scenes with Snowy, as Tintin gets loaded onto a ship. Evil Abraham Lincoln wants Tintin's scroll from the model ship, until Snowy sets him free, finally revealing the absolute best character in the movie, for a number of reasons, Captain Haddock. And right here, it's really where the movie finally truly starts.
And oh boy, does it start.
Haddock, voiced by Andy Serkis, in yet another role where he can't show his true face. But anyway, Tintin and Haddock have such a good buddy cop dynamic. Their chemistry is just fantastic, to the point where I question why it took the movie so long to get to this duo. And also to the point where I really started to realize how boring of a character Tintin is by himself. However, when paired with Haddock, they're
An unstoppable force.
and I just can't get enough of it. Haddock is a drunk and explains that he's the last son of the three Haddock brothers. And that right there sets up the perfect character for him, and how important he really becomes.
We'll get to it.
Now, we get another really exciting action sequence with great animation, of course, and the music really does start becoming more prominent. However, I'll be honest, it's pretty basic, and I was honestly surprised to find out that it was the John Williams who did it. And don't get me wrong, it does sound like John Williams, and yes, you would think that that would be enough for it to sound good, but it really just sounds like his music, the discounted version. And really, the only good motifs in the movie are the ones that sound just like his past work. Like one in particular that sounds almost identical to the one in The Last Crusade. It reminded me of a better score I wish I was listening to. But that was exactly the problem. It reminded me of a better score I wish I was listening to. But anyway, they escape on a boat. Tintin tells Haddock about the model ship, and that there's something Haddock remembers about it. However, since he was the lesser of the three children, he resorted to drinking and doesn't remember anything, because he doesn't accept himself, which again, really comes into play later. Then, in an almost hilariously out of place scene, we see these two guys again stop the pickpocketer, who never appears in the movie again?
Oh, we just wanted to remind you they existed. Back to the adventure.
Haddock continues to be, well, the opposite of sober, and starts a fire in the boat. And again, their chemistry is just fantastic. Then, in a scene straight out of The Last Crusade, a plane ambushes their boat. Tintin turns into Deadshot as he shoots the plane and it lands in the water. Also, it's kind of crazy how okay he is with all this stuff happening. Apparently, he's supposed to be about 16, which means I am literally the same age as this kid and would not be calm with a plane machine gunning me down atop a tipped over burning boat in the middle of the ocean.
Although I can't tell if I'm envious or thankful.
Then we get another great sequence as they outfly the storm. Under the intense heat of the desert, Haddock recalls his past through a beautifully crafted shot.
And then, the movie just goes full on Pirates of the Caribbean, and I mean that in the best possible way.
In fact, because it is animation, this allows them to go even greater with the spectacle, as they can literally draw out anything they want. And it really feels like Steven Spielberg and Peter Jackson were just flexing everything they had on this scene. However, the only downside I have with it is that it lacks the signature Hans Zimmer pirate theme. And the idea of a John Williams pirate theme just sounds epic.
But, it's fine.
As soon as Haddock sobers up from the dehydration, the story gets cut short. But Snowy realizes this and replaces his water with alcohol so he can finish the story. And of course, he does. And we get an incredible dual perspective action sequence. Way better than whatever they were trying to do with Star Wars Rise of the Fanfiction. Which, ironically enough, also has a really mediocre Williams score. He recalls the story one final time to reveal that Haddock destroyed Evil Abe Lincoln's ship, which left a giant bounty of treasure at the bottom of the sea. And that there were 3 clues leading to where it was, all 3 of them in the model ships. We get an awesome transition as they head to the city to find the final model ship, and the John Williams motif that sounds like The Last Crusade continues to swell. But it fits so perfectly, I just can't get mad at it. In fact, this whole scene is basically just Indiana Jones light. They run into, these guys again.
Oh, but I completely forgot they existed. But again, back to the adventure.
They sneak into this party or whatever, as we see the only other woman voiced character in the movie. She's being escorted by Evil Abe Lincoln, and we get a scene so well put together and set up that it was just satisfying to watch it all come together. Because you find out what's going on as soon as the characters do too. The model ship is in a glass encasing, as the woman sings some incredibly high notes. And at first, it was kind of a weird scene, because this goes on for like 4 minutes, and I was waiting for something to happen. But the thing was, something was happening. It was just done so discreetly I couldn't tell. The woman's beautiful voice soars until the glass around the model ship shatters. Tintin gets mad at Haddock, who lost the other scroll because he was drinking again, which is also really well done and important, until we get my favorite action sequence in the movie. This entire chase just screams one word: adventure. And it gets even better with this clear Andy and his father relationship, which is just classic Spielberg. But then we get a long shot that is just so beautiful and exciting. Very reminiscent of Aquaman, and not only the setting, but the directing too. And it lasts for a whole something like 2 minutes. All of the characters are zipping and flying through the city, trying to recover all the scrolls, and my eyes were glued to the screen the whole time. I had never seen anything like it, and it was the perfect directing choice on Spielberg's part. However, James Bond puts Tintin in a difficult position where
What do you value more, those scrolls souls or Haddock's life.
Way to care about Snowy.
Although, of course, Tintin saves their lives and gives up the scroll, along with a joke Endgame completely stole.
Taking it.
Like nobody takes my ship twice.
Then, completely unlike his whole persona, Tintin gives up, which only makes Haddock have to take control of the situation, which is something he hadn't done this entire movie, which makes the perfect subversive character arc. Let me explain. For the most part, The Adventures of Tintin follows a very simple hero's journey. We see Tintin's normal life until it gets turned completely upside down, just like, well, every other hero ever. And of course, you have the MacGuffin, which is the main cause of this happening. So, you know, he goes through the adventure, finds the mentor, and ultimately becomes a better version of himself with this new knowledge, right? No! This movie completely defies that set hero's journey, because I would argue that Tintin isn't the main character, Haddock is. Tintin throughout the movie is pretty static. He's an optimist and always has the motivation and drive to help others and get to the truth. But for Haddock, ever since we first see him, you can tell that he is in pain but just suppressing it with alcohol. He is doubtful of himself the whole time, to the point where he comes off as the funny, incompetent side character. However, this whole time, he was fighting his own battles, and seeing Tintin's optimism inspired his true self to finally come out when it needed to the most, because it would be very hard for other people to accept him if he couldn't even accept himself. Which is why in this classic part of the hero's journey where the protagonist is at an all-time low and has to receive a speech from the mentor, he isn't convincing Tintin to not give up, he's convincing himself.
Now, is it as grand or awe-inspiring as the beautiful Rango crossing the line scene? No. But is it just as effective? Still no. But is it just as important? No. Nothing ever will be.
However, while Rango was perfectly following this hero's formula, The Adventures of Tintin was willing to subvert that and make the supposed side buddy character the most important. And it was such a treat to see something done different with that. Maybe most people won't care about these types of things like I do, but this is how you subvert expectations. Just because you don't expect something doesn't mean it's good. If everyone in The Last Jedi just woke up in the Matrix and Tinkerbell took them to Neverland to live happily ever after with the Teletubbies,
yeah, I definitely wouldn't expect that.
but does that mean it's good?
Well, it'd be more interesting than whatever this was, but no.
The Adventures of Tintin knows exactly how to use the concept of subverting expectations, without going too far and doing it just for the sake of subverting expectations. It is the perfect balance. Anyway, after all that, we get a final ending scene on the docks with a pretty cool action sequence reminiscent of a sword fight, which I thought was really cool, as Haddock finally gets to be the hero he once was. They stop evil Abe Lincoln, match up all the scrolls, and end up finding the treasure, teasing many more sequels that we never got to see. But at least this gave Jamie Bell an opportunity to pursue a career in the comic book movie industry, right? Oh, never mind.
And that was The Adventures of Tintin. Was it a perfect movie? No.
This movie is one of a kind, literally, and it being one of the few movies that have used this type of animation. But I'm so glad it did, because it completely pays off. Everything from the lighting to the detail to the facial emotions, it's just all there. And the action reaches a certain spectacle few other animated movies are able to capture. Along with that, the music is pretty good, nothing too special, and the two main characters are just fantastic and have amazing chemistry. Jamie Bell's soft optimism mixed with Andy Serkis's booming gravitas were so different that they fit perfectly. And even though the opening was slow and fast-paced at the same time, while the slapstick humor mixed with ultra realism, well, fit about as well as you'd expect, those are all very minor looking back, because this movie was an experience that doesn't get near the amount of credit it deserves. While I wish we did get to see this series continue, I guess we'll just have to cherish what we have.
But at least this gave Andy Serkis the opportunity to be in one of the best franchises ever, right? Oh, never mind.